Hello everybody, it's Phelan from Strand Knitting Studio, and I had camera difficulties today. My video did not go. So I spliced together a couple of older Encore videos that have to do with the two classes that are coming up, the owl, and I'm going to do the pressed flower. And I also re-put the tutorial for the slip stitches for the pressed flower shawl at the end of the video. And so I hope you enjoyed the video, even though it's an encore video. Hope to see you in the studio real soon. Bye. It's September 4th, and I've already talked about the owl class. So there's Mama Owl. Here's Baby Owl. Again, this is Susan B. Anderson. They're called Love Owls. So maybe, yeah, they're called Love Owls. And so you can do this one. And again, I suggested that if you can magic loop and do the body, which is no big deal, and get stuffed and ready to go, so that when you come to class, you're working on the embroidery and stuff that's happening, wings and all that kind of stuff, that's a really good option. If you don't know how to do the small circular knitting and you need to learn how to do that, then just come to class with your yarn and your needles, and I'll get you started on that. And then you'll come back at some other time if you need help with embroidery, and I'll help you with the embroidery. So that's that. And then I'm gonna add our little mermaid. Isn't she cute? Okay, this is also Susan B. Anderson. Pretty much everything I do toy-wise is gonna be Susan B. Anderson. Might throw one or two things outside of there. Anyway, so she's adorable. Again, one piece all the way up. These little arms you do, and then you pick up for the little tails and you knit them on and put a little bit of stuffing in them. And they're very cool. So I suggest that this is done at a fingering, and I must have dropped one of mine. So this is done at a fingering weight. So I suggest using these. Now the colors we have are the colors we have. These have been around for a couple years now. So you'll have, but we have a lot of colors, and you only need one or two. I probably will only need one of each color. So there's lots of options. You can also do this on, we have cashmerino, and that's a sport weight. You could use that. You could use DK, it's just gonna be bigger. So you'll use the same pattern, and you'll go up a little bit needle size. If you go up yarn, you'll go up needle size. And so it'll be the same, it'll just be the doll will be a little bit bigger, that's all. So, you know, the different yarns, the worsted weight, it's all fine. The doll just is a little bit bigger. So these are your options. She's living here with our dream San Clemente seaside, and she's having fun swimming through the waves. Yay! So that's where she's been living, because it's appropriate, right? So anyway, she's been now added to the class that has the owls. So you now have the choice of these two, and that's September 4th, Sunday, 10 to 12. So I finished it last night. I'm so happy with it. It was a really, really fun knit. This is pressed flowers, and it just turns out so beautiful. It's lovely in this yarn. We did it out of the Dream, which has a bit of cashmere in it. And so it drapes really nicely. And it was just a pleasant knit, just a really fun knit. It is a long knit. It's a lot of knitting, you know, so this isn't like an overnight kind of project. This is a bit of a project, but it's not too complicated once you get a few things down. And I'm actually going to do a little tutorial on the slip stitch, on what a slip stitch pattern means. So I've got just a little, you know, sample of this, and I can show you what it means to do a slip stitch pattern, and how you only have to carry one yarn at a time to do the color work. So you're not carrying multiple colors at one time, which makes it much simpler. And once you set up each row, then after that, your flowers are set for that row, and then it's easy to do that row, that section of flower. And then you set up the next row, flowers. Once you set up that row, then it's easy to set the thing up. So anyways, this is pressed flowers. And we're going to do a class on June 5th at 10 o'clock. That's Sunday, June 5th at 10 o'clock. I didn't wear the right color. This is why I wear black a lot. The red just doesn't quite do it. So ignore the red. So anyways, June 5th on a Sunday at 10 o'clock, and get this started. You may end up starting it 2 or 3 times. Don't be shocked if you sort of get it started and like, okay, I made a few mistakes, I'm gonna try it again. That's sort of the process when you're learning something new like this that has a pattern to it that you sort of have to get your head wrapped around. But we'll get you started. And Dream is what we're using. So we're using the Dream for the main color. Well, they're all Dream, but we're using the DK, the Cosette, for the main color. You can use all the Cosette if you want, because there's some like this, and this is just, you know, too good to be true. And you'll need 4 skeins, 2 of each color. Or you can use 2 of these for the background and 1 of our mini fingering ones for the flowers. And these are fingering, so you're mixing a DK with a fingering, which I think actually makes this very drapey, because the fingering yarn is so much thinner that, you know, but it totally works. Like, the flowers are beautiful. So then you only need 1 skein for the flower color. So that'd be 3 skeins instead of 4. So those are the options here. I'm sure you could come up with more options if you wanted to. And so now I'm gonna move us over to the tutorial. So stay tuned. Okay, so here's my little swatch. I already have the flowers set up here. Got it going a little bit. And the last row I did was the black. You can tell because the black is hooked onto this black stitch right here. The white one is down a couple rows. See, it's not hooked onto the needle. So this was my last row. This was black. I knitted all the black and I slipped all the white, the colored one. Okay, and so now I'm on the white row, white color. So now I'm gonna knit the whites and slip the blacks. So the pattern here to get this every other pattern thing going here is a slip and knit thing. So you're gonna knit one, you're gonna slip a black. You're gonna knit one, slip a black, knit one, slip a back. And then I'm gonna knit these 3 because that's my colors. So I'm knitting these colors, knit those 3. Because I'd slipped them already 2 rows. I don't want to slip them some more because then they just become giant long stitches and tighten up. And now I'm going to go back to my every other. So slip, knit, slip, knit. And remember, you're just going in as a purl, moving 1 stitch from one needle to the other straight across. That's all you're doing. And now I'm to the flowers here. So I'm going to knit 3. And then I'm back to slipping. So it's slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, and knit 1. Okay, that was the knit front row. That was the front knit row. So it's all knit except for the back of the flowers. The only thing you purl is when you're on the back of the flowers. Everything else is knit. But this is the right side row. There is a wrong side row. So here's the right side row. There's the wrong side row. Okay, because all your ladders that are carried across need to be on the wrong side row. You don't want them on the right side row. So that's the hardest part of this to get, but once you get the rhythm of it, it's not so bad. But like now, this is the tedious row. So you're going to knit the white, and now you're going to slip the black. But again, now my yarn is in the back, but that's on the right side of the fabric. So I need to move it so that it's on the wrong side of the fabric to slip it, because then my yarn carries across that stitch, and I want that to be on the back. And then I've got to knit, so I got to bring my yarn. So I'm moving my yarn back and forth when I'm doing this every other one. And you can see how the yarn is back here. That's the one I just carried across the black stitch. So on the wrong side white flowered rows, you have to keep moving your yarn. Like it's almost like you're doing a seed stitch. So you slip with the yarn in front, and you knit one with yarn in back until you get to the flowers. Slip with front. Now I'm on flowers. Okay, so I got 3 flower stitches here. I'm gonna purl those. So the only things you actually purl are the back of the flowers, because as you can see, the flowers are stockinette. They're not bumpy. Like that's what makes the difference between the background and the flowers. The flowers are stockinette, so you've got to purl the back side of the flowers. And then I'm gonna slip one so my yarn stays in front. Now I'm gonna knit one. So this is just like seed stitch, you know, moving your yarn back and forth every stitch when you're doing the slip part. Now I'm going to slip one. Now I'm going to add another flower. So I'm going to purl the flowers. And I'm going to slip this one. And now I've got to knit the next one. So I got to push it back. Forward to slip. Back to knit. Forward to slip. Back to knit. Okay, and there's the back. So now I've completed the white one. And now it's time to pick up the black, oh no, yeah, the black one. which is hiding over here on my other side of my needle here. Okay, so now it's time to pick up the black one. And you just pick it up. You're only 2 rows down, so it's no big deal. You just pick it up. I think I tend to put my old yarn in the back and pick up the new yarn in the front. Now, the black pattern is, everything's black except for the flowers, okay? So, so I'm just knit black. And it's just a straight knit. Until I get to the flowers. And then, oh, that's a flower stitch. And then I'm going to slip the flowers. And then I'm knitting to the next flower. So there's sort of an easy row, you know, where you don't not moving the yarn back and forth. And now I'm back to a flower again. So I'm going to slip these 3. And I'm going to knit to the end. And on the back side, again, I'm knitting all but the flower stitches. So I'm slipping flower stitches. So this whole row, the black rows are all knit. There's no purling on the black rows. So black of knitting. Okay, now I'm on my flower stitch. Remember the ladder, this has to be carried in the wrong side. So if I don't move it, it's going to carry right across the front of my flower. So, you know, it'll just be carried right there, which I don't want that. So I have to move my yarn to the back so I can slip these. And then I move my yarn back to the front so I can knit these. So it sounds like there's a lot to do, and there is, and this is why sort of getting it started is, you know, it takes a bit to get your mind wrapped around this whole thing. But once you get it going and you've done a full section of flowers, so I'm moving my yarn back and front so I can slip these flowers. And now I'm knitting to the end. Then it all makes sense. So with knitting, it's all about your brain. You really want your brain to be able to, and I do pull a little bit on this ladder behind the flower. Sometimes I'll pull it, especially the one on the backside row. Okay, so there's our little flowers starting. And then you can see how these are this every other thing here, which I think is brilliant, the way that is. So that's, you know, all this checkerboard thing going on here that's so cool. That's what that does. Love it. So it just takes a bit to get your mind wrapped around it. And then the row that you really have to pay attention to is when you start a new flower, to make sure that the flowers are setting up correctly, you know, that you don't screw that up. And then once the flower's set up, as you can see, it's easy for me to see where the flower is. So like the next row, next time I would be adding the stitches to make the flower wider. So I'd be knitting. So, but I know where they are because it's 2 on each side of the flower. And I don't have, you know, so I'm cute. So this whole thing is about your brain picking up the pattern, the actual pattern, not memorizing like the pattern that's written down, but actually looking at your knitting and in the way that your brain works, figuring out how to think about what's actually happening. And it's going to be different for different people. My brain works somewhat backwards sometimes, and it's totally wacky. But however it works, there's no wrong way. You just want it to work, you know? So watching what you're doing and then figuring a way to think about it that makes sense to you so that it becomes a pattern that you can recognize immediately what you're doing. That's the whole goal of any kind of pattern work is getting it down, you know, doing it a few times and then allowing your brain to start working and going, okay, now what's really happening here? Because sometimes you may pick up the pattern, like if you have a whole row of a pattern, but the repeat is actually sort of in the middle somewhere, you may start thinking about the start of the repeat in the middle of the row. So don't keep yourself in a box to where you're having to be from the beginning of the pattern to the end of the pattern on the row. You may need to break up that row into different sections that make more sense for your brain, like that make it easy for your brain to realize what's going on. So that's good practice in almost anything you do it doesn't have to be color patterns. Actually, color patterns are easier because it's really obvious what's going on. texture patterns are a little bit more difficult than like lacy patterns. And so you really have to watch what's going on and then sort of dissect it with your thoughts, your mind, so that you can figure out what the pattern is so that you can just work it without it being like I'm having to read every stitch of every note, the whole row, you know, that you get down. Okay, this one is knit 3, yarn over, knit 2, yarn over, knit 3, you know, that's a simple pattern. But